Ladies and gentlemen, I want to begin by asking you one simple question. What if everything you've experienced up to this point was only preparation? What if the detours, the delays, the disappointments, the dreams, the triumphs, the trauma were never the destination, but the conditioning? We live in a world obsessed with the now, but God is obsessed with the purpose. And purpose is never rushed. Purpose is never confused by, oh, you don't need to be perfect, you need to be ready. There's a lie that has robbed more people of their purpose than failure ever could. It whispers that unless you are perfect, you are disqualified. Unless you have it all figured out, you should sit still. That unless you have no flaws, no wounds, no doubts, you cannot lead, you cannot start, and you certainly cannot finish. But God doesn't call the perfect. He calls the prepared. He doesn't look for people who have everything. He looks for people who are willing to give him everything. When God said, prepare for final plan, he wasn't asking for a flawless resume. He was asking for a surrendered heart. The people God used most in history weren't the most polished. They were the most available. Moses had a stutter. Esther was an orphan. Paul was a murderer. David was overlooked. Mary was a teenager. And yet every single one of them said yes. Every single one of them allowed their imperfections to be used as instruments in God's hands. They were not perfect, but they were ready. Readiness is not a destination, it's a mindset. It is a decision to live with your bags packed, your spirit tuned, your faith high. It's not waiting until everything makes sense. It's walking forward when nothing makes sense except your belief that God is with you. Readiness says, I don't know what's next, but I know who's leading me. That kind of readiness is dangerous to the enemy. It shakes atmospheres. It disrupts comfort. It moves him. When you live ready, you stop performing and start preparing. You start building even before the rain comes, like Noah did. You start praying even before God doesn't prepare the plan for you. He prepares you for the plan. There's a myth we've been sold, a belief that if something is meant to be, it should come easily, that if a dream is divine, then the doors will swing open without resistance, that if it's God's will, that it will happen on autopilot. But purpose doesn't come wrapped in convenience. It comes wrapped in preparation. And not the kind of preparation where the world changes to fit you, but the kind where you change to fit the call. God does not prepare the plan for you, he prepares you for the plan. Let that sink in, because so many of us are waiting for circumstances to align, for opportunities to knock, for signs to appear. When the truth is, God is already working, but he's working on you. He's not rearranging the outside, he's refining the inside. Because when the final plan unfolds, it won't be your talent that sustains it. It'll be your character. It'll be your discipline. It'll be your faith under pressure. That's why preparation often feels painful. That's why it feels like delay. But in reality, it's not delay, it's development. Think about it. Before Joseph ever interpreted Pharaoh's dream and became second in command, he went through betrayal, slavery, and prison. Why? Because leadership without humility becomes pride. Influence without integrity becomes poison. Joseph had to be prepared for the position long before the position opened. The same applies to you. You may not understand why you're walking through what you're walking through, but what you're learning in private is equipping you for what you'll carry in public. Preparation is never wasted. Every closed door, every rejection, every loss is an ingredient in your growth. You see, we want the plan to make us comfortable, but God's plan is designed to make us capable. And there's a big difference between comfort and capability. Comfort feels good in the moment. Capability carries the weight of purpose. So when you find yourself in seasons of stretching, don't panic. It means God trusts you with more. We don't rise to the level of our desires. We rise to the level of our preparation. You can want influence, you can want impact, but if you're not prepared, you won't sustain either. That's why God allows tests not to fail you, but to forge you. That's why he takes his time, not because he's punishing you, but because he's positioning you. So while you're waiting for the plan, remember, God is waiting on you, not because he's trying to keep something from you, but because he wants to give you everything and for you to have the strength to handle it. God doesn't need time to work things out. He uses time to work you out. Jeremiah said, "Your word is like a fire shut up in my bones. I'm weary of holding it in." That's what it feels like when you're sitting on a message that you're too afraid to say. It burns, it eats away at you, because it's not meant to stay inside. You were not built for silence. You were built for sound. Prophetic voices are not defined by volume, they're defined by alignment. The goal is to be true. You may not have a platform, you may not have a microphone, but if you have breath, you have a voice. And your voice, when rooted in truth, has power. Power to shake rooms, power to shift atmospheres, power to awaken people who didn't even know they were asleep. That's the kind of impact you were designed to have. But you can't access that impact until you make peace with being misunderstood, until you let go of needing to be clapped for and step into the raw, sometimes uncomfortable truth of who you are and what you carry. Because in the end, your words are not for everyone, but they are for someone. And that someone may be silently drowning in doubt, in fear, in confusion, waiting for someone brave enough to say what no one else will. That someone might be you a few years ago. That someone might be your future self, or your children, or a stranger across the world. You may never know who you impact, but you will know the weight that lifts when you finally speak. Wait for the fulfillment, even if it takes years. One of the hardest parts of walking in purpose is the waiting, not the passive kind of waiting we experience in line at a coffee shop, but the soul-deep, uncertain waiting that comes after you've obeyed, after you've spoken, after you've risked, and nothing seems to happen. That kind of waiting tests everything in you. Your patience, your belief, your identity. And yet it is in that waiting that the most powerful parts of your story are formed. Hebrew prophecy was never immediate. When the prophets spoke, the fulfillment rarely arrived the next day or even the next year. Some prophecies took decades, others are still unfolding. The time between the message and the manifestation wasn't a mistake, it was intentional. Purpose has timing, and timing isn't based on our convenience. It's based on alignment. You can be right and still be early. You can be anointed and still have to wait. We live in a culture that confuses speed with success. We want quick results, immediate applause, fast growth. But divine purpose doesn't follow cultural timelines, it follows eternal ones. And that means you may plant seeds now that don't bear fruit until years from today. You may speak words that won't be understood until someone is ready to hear them. You may walk in circles like the Israelites, wondering why it's taking so long, only to discover later that the delay was protecting you, shaping you, preparing you. Waiting doesn't mean you're stuck. Waiting means you're being processed. And the process is never wasted. Think of it this way. The longer something is in development, the more powerful it usually becomes. Fast food is quick, but it's not nourishing. A gourmet meal takes time. A skyscraper takes longer to build than a shed. The same is true for your purpose. If it's taking longer, it's probably because what you're carrying is bigger. Think about Abraham. He was given a promise, descendants like the stars, but then silence, years of it, no child, no sign, just a promise hanging in the air while his faith was tested over and over. And when the fulfillment finally came, it wasn't just about a baby, it was about legacy, about nations, about a lineage that would stretch into eternity. That's the kind of promise that takes time. That's the kind of fulfillment that's worth waiting for. In the waiting, your character is being strengthened, your endurance is being refined, your faith is being made real, not just theoretical, because faith that never has to wait is just optimism. But faith that can sit in the unknown, that can stand firm in the silence, that can trust when the timeline has fallen apart. That's faith that's been tested. That's faith that can move mountains. And here's something powerful. Just because you don't see movement doesn't mean movement isn't happening. Purpose often grows underground. Roots spread before branches appear. The foundation is laid before the house is ever seen. That's what waiting does. It builds the unseen strength that will hold up the visible promise. If God gave you the fulfillment without the foundation, it would crush you. So the waiting isn't a delay, it's a mercy. While you're waiting, you're not wasting time. You're becoming time. You are becoming the very space where purpose is shaped and released. You're becoming more focused, more surrendered, more in tune with the mission that's bigger than you. You start to realize it was never just about the outcome. It was about who you became in the waiting. So don't rush the process. Don't resent the quiet seasons. Don't confuse stillness with stagnation. Because when your life is like a Hebrew prophecy, you live by a different rhythm. You walk by a different clock. And the fulfillment, when it comes, will not only make sense of the wait, it will make the wait worth it. Absolutely. Here's the 600-word expanded version of Step 4. Let your life become the message, written in the thought-provoking, purpose-driven, and emotionally resonant style of Simon Sinek, without any subheadings or conclusion. Just the heart of the message.